Hello everyone, welcome to the best of Inside NASCAR. We're at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, in December, things are a little quieter than they are in the summer here at this mile-and-a-half speedway. We're going to take a look at a lot of the things that happened during the year and mostly the personalities that were involved. Bill Elliott was the big story on the Winston Cup circuit in 1985. He set all kinds of speed records, money records, and most races won on super speedways.
We also, in all fairness, have to show the other side of the coin. We'll take a look at the vanishing breed known as the independent driver. In this case, we'll talk to Ronnie Thomas, whom we met back in May. He's having a tough time, as are the other independent drivers, making ends meet and being competitive. And as time goes by, I'm afraid that those kind of drivers are going to have it a little tougher. But first things first, Bill Elliott was the big story in 1985, so let's take a look at him now.
The Elliott's hard work paid its first real dividends when Bill won the Miller 400 last year in Brooklyn, Michigan. Bill had run some very strong races and in fact won at Riverside in 1983, but that was under a caution flag, so there were still many non-believers. But at the Elliott shop in Dawsonville, Georgia, Bill, his brothers Ernie, Dan, and the rest of the crew were slowly finding the right combination, all part of a master plan that was set up by Ernie.
You know, you've got to have some kind of plan. And, you know, when we first started, our basic plan was just try to finish races, which we didn't do too good at, you know, to begin with. But, you know, we worked harder on that, and, you know, we got the car where it would finish races. And then we tried to work on our pit work. And just, you know, as we went along, we just had different goals that we tried to achieve. And you know, when you're just beginning, finishing in the top 10 and, you know, in a Grand National race is, you know, a pretty big achievement. And, you know, I guess that was the first, you know, or maybe the second goal we worked toward was, you know, just trying to make the car finish in the top 10. And then, you know, as we worked on the car and tried to get a little bit more competitive, we set our goals just a little bit higher.
I think we've kind of set our own goals. It's something that we wanted to do from the very beginning, is win races. And that's, I guess, been the most important goal. And a lot of the things that we have done, people have told us we couldn't do. And I guess that's another thing that's helped us in that respect too, made us work harder.
The fact that the Elliotts have accomplished so much away from the hub of Grand National racing in Charlotte is testimony to their brains and work ethic. For a guy who has won 7 out of the last 10 super speedway races since last October, Bill Elliott's formula for success is no big mystery.
I think my biggest goal is to be competitive. That's what I always said. And as long as you're competitive, you're going to win some races, I feel like. If you stay under that, that's what my heading of competitive is. You'll win some races and you'll lose some races, but you know, I don't care. I don't really want to win all the races, which I probably do, but I know that's not going to happen. You know, I just like to win my share of races.
To visit Dawsonville, Georgia is to gain some insight on the hottest sports star in the country. Dawsonville has been home for Bill Elliott and family, as it has been for 3 generations. Down the road a bit is the house that Bill lives in with his wife Martha, daughter Star, and his grandmother. Bill, Martha, and Star live in the basement. The house that Bill, Ernie, and Dan grew up in is right across the street. Their parents still live there. Right next door to the parents' house is the shop where the Elliott boys put together the fastest Grand National cars the world has ever seen. The world of big league stock car racing is such a contrast to the world Bill knew as a boy.
You know, I never was subject to a lot of people. You know, being around groups of people is sometimes hard to deal with for some people. And, you know, living around here, you can see why. You know, I never, you know, I did work at we had a building supply business. I did work there, and, you know, you met people, but it was kind of one at a time deal. You know, you never was around a lot of group of people. And it's something to get used to, and it seems like I'm still nervous around it. Used to, I know, whenever I was working on the car, back when there was just probably me and Ernie, that if a camera came around, I did everything to avoid it. You know, not that I was, you know, stuck up or anything like that, but I just was afraid to be around a camera.
Bill is one of the few drivers who works on his cars. He does all the chassis work, which, according to his wife Martha, is more than a full-time job.
A lot of the people don't realize the work that they do. I mean, through the winter, after Riverside, I think we went out twice to eat, and he took a half a day off at Christmas to eat lunch, and that was it. And everybody assumes, like I said, on Sunday, when they drive a car, well, this is all that it takes.
They just kind of show up and race.
I think that's the easiest part.
Well, my biggest thing is whenever one race is over, I'm thinking about the next race. You know, I don't worry about, if you fall out of a race, if you're running good, you kind of get down on that part. But, you know, if you do win, you know, you stay up. And from right there, I think about the next race.
Have you had time to enjoy the success?
No.
Do you think there will be a time when you'll be able to look back and say it was fun or exciting?
It's exciting. It is fun. But I don't know that we've done anything different that we have not done, gosh, in the last 5 to 10 years. We're still doing the same thing. We've not took but one vacation. But it's just that I don't see a stopping point for it. Even if he quits racing, I don't see a stopping point. Because I think he'll be involved in it some way, one way or the other.
Anyone in the Elliott family will admit that they've had to make big personal sacrifices in order to sit in victory lane. They'll also admit that they work too much and there's not a whole lot of balance. But then, maybe that's why they've become heroes.
Ernie, the fans really seem to have identified with you guys. You know, Dan said at Talladega, at a time when most fans would be, leaving because this was getting kind of ho-hum, they were on their feet cheering you guys on. Can you explain why, the fans seem to rally around you so much?
Well, I don't know. That's hard to say. I hope it's because, we can represent a part of America that's kind of overlooked now. There's not too many dreams left here. Doesn't seem like anymore, although I feel like there is. But, with the things going like they are, the economy and things like that, looking up and down, people got a kind of a tendency to look at things a little bit more negative, and I know I'm just as bad as anybody about looking at things kind of on the negative side. But I hope maybe we represent to them, that if you work hard, you can make it. You can make a go of whatever you decide to do, and that, and I hope that none of this changes any of us.
No, that's not the body man putting the finishing touches on Ronnie Thomas's car number 41. That is Ronnie Thomas. That's also Ronnie Thomas of the pit crew. Ronnie Thomas, the team manager.
Hey, it's Kevin there. Hey, is he mounting those tires up? Wonder how long they'll be, Sammy.
And Ronnie Thomas, the crew chief.
I bet you Junior Johnson and Waddell Wilson like to have an engine room this big. What is this, Ronnie? It's about 5 foot wide and about 10 foot long, ain't it?
Ronnie Thomas is one of the last independents on the NASCAR circuit. He was Rookie of the Year in 1978, but he has yet to pick up a sponsor and the big bucks that go with it.
I don't know. I'm not even going to get into it. I just won't say what I want to say. It's just, I like it and I enjoy racing. If I didn't like it, I'd quit. You know, must be something to it. I keep coming back. So I guess what it all boils down to is I'm just hoping something good does happen. I'm 30 years old now. I'm getting older, getting fatter, so I'm gonna have to do something. You know, I'm in a rut.
Ronnie Thomas is in a rut because he's racing without any money. He's racing on old tires and guts. Junior Johnson oversees 37 full-time employees for his Budweiser racing team. Ronnie Thomas doesn't have a single full-time helper. He gets by with the help of his dad, Jabe, and some very loyal friends.
No, you run it backwards. Turn your thing.
2 or 3 ways to look at it. In the racing world, as far as Petty and those guys go, or Allison or any of them, those top teams, I might be kind of at the bottom of the totem pole. But in real life, I guess I'm fairly well off in real life. I'm no rich kid, but I'm a middle-class kid. Got more than some kids my age, so it's 2 ways to look at it. In the racing world, I have it tough, but in everyday life, it's not really terrible. It's not near as bad as people make it out to be.
Times are hard for Ronnie, no doubt about it, but he loves racing. Sadly, the love affair has been a hard one.
Point, what used to be is I was just glad to be there. I know that I could run with them, but I was just happy to drive. Now I've got to the point I want to run with them. I'm not happy just to drive anymore. My feelings in the last 4 or 5 years of Grand National racing have swapped in the opposite direction. I'm just not happy being one of the boys now. I want to be something.
For the first time in his career, Ronnie can't afford to run every race. He went to North Wilkesboro, but as a fan.
When that race started at North Wilkesboro, I got a chill run up my spine just hearing the cars run. Even though I wasn't a part of it, it just stimulated me all over to hear the cars running. And what really hurt not being there was when they dropped that flag and they went off in number 1 corner. I wanted to be sitting in one of those cars so bad. And to be honest with you, not a back running car, not a car that even runs middle pack. I looked up there and I seen Darrell's car and Bobby's car. I seen those guys up there and I wanted to be sitting in there. I thought what I would give to be able to sit in that number 11 or number 22. I mean, I know if I could have been sitting in that car at the time, I would have been all over those guys. No doubt in my mind, I could have run with them. I feel like I could outrun them. I mean, people laugh at that. I feel if you don't feel that way, you don't need to be out there. But nobody knows how. I told my girlfriend, we was watching the race up there, and I said, you don't know how much I'd like to be sitting in that number 11 or number 22 right now. Not just particularly those cars, but any of those first 10 or 15 cars. I said, I would just love to be sitting in a piece of equipment like that. And no, all you had to do was get out there and push the button.
Okay, Ronnie, so bottom line, if you had that kind of a car, you feel in your heart that you could run with those guys.
I know I can. No feeling to it.
You know you can.
No, I can.
So bottom line, does it take the sponsorship and the bucks to do it?
Absolutely.
What steps can be taken to improve the status of the independents? Is there anything you can put your finger on? Is there anything you've thought of?
Well, the best way and the quickest way is to probably turn bank robber, and that would that would do it real quick. I need to go rob a bank, but I'm not going to do that. But I mean, being on the serious point of it, I don't know. There's people out there can help Ronnie Thomas if they want to, and all I'm telling them, if they'll give me the opportunity, I'll produce. That's all I've got to say about the thing. I'm not bragging. I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else. saying they give me the money, I can put the car to going, or either put me in a good ride. To be honest with you, I just soon have a good ride. I done got to the point I'm really fed up of doing it myself. Now, of course, if I had 400,000 or 500,000, I'm sure it'd make it a lot more fun. But I just like to have the opportunity just to show these old boys what Ronnie Thomas can do. Because I tell you what, Ron, they can laugh all they want to. If I ever get in a car like Dale Earnhardt's, or Petty's, or Yarbrough's, I got something to show them. I ain't gonna say I'm gonna blow them up, but old Ronnie Thomas just has him a little time on his cars. He's gonna be going, and I can do it. But here today, gone tomorrow. If I get the chance, I'll be there, and if I don't, I'm gone. So we just have to. I guess all the man knows is the good Lord right now. Well, Ned, that does provide quite a contrast. Bill Elliott, who wins over $2 million, and Ronnie Thomas, who could run but 7 races this year because he couldn't make ends meet. One lighter side to the story, though, Ronnie lost 30 pounds since he saw that story. He said, man, I'm looking fat on TV. Also, a little bit of an update. Chances are he may have some sponsorship money. We'll find out in Daytona during Speed Weeks.
Well, let's hope that works out, because he has a lot of desire and a lot of talent. There might not be a lot of difference in his talent and Bill Elliott's. It's just a difference in the brakes and the money that they have. You know, Steve, one of my favorite stories during the year was that of Wendell Scott, the only black driver to ever win on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit. And his career ended sort of abruptly. We went to his home in Danville, Virginia. Here's a touching story about Wendell Scott.
Wendell Scott was born 63 years ago in Danville, Virginia. He developed an early respect for cars and engines, his father an outstanding mechanic. Wendell won 128 sportsman races during his career and claimed 1 Grand National victory, beating names like Petty, Pearson, and Jarrett. Wendell forged his racing apprenticeship as a whiskey runner up and down Tobacco Road. He built fast cars, and he outran the local police most of the time.
Oh, yeah. That's really how I got started in racing. They opened up a little small track in Danville called the Dixie Speedway, and they wanted to get some black drivers, and they thought they didn't know who to approach, so they went to the police department to find out what black guys had speeding records and things like that. So they told them they want somebody to drive a race car to see me. So that's how I started racing.
You had to do things a little bit differently because you didn't have the financial backing that myself and a lot of other people had on the circuit back then, and there were stories that you would get out and make your own pit stop, change tires, or service your car when you'd come in.
Well, some of that was true, but it wasn't to the extent that they built it up to be. And you take my old Chevrolet, I had a sign on it, mechanic me, and people used to get a lot of kick out of that. But most of the work I had to do myself, and I had that on it. People would ask me who was my pit crew, who was my mechanic. I said me, and I was.
What was the biggest thrill you had in racing?
Well, I had a lot of thrills. It looked like it would have been when I won the race in Jacksonville, Florida in '63, but for a while it wasn't a thrill because it was 2 or 3 hours later before I was declared the winner.
They flagged Buck Baker the winner?
Yeah. Jack Smith second, and I was third.
But you knew that you'd won the race?
I had passed Buck Baker 3 times. I only made 1 pit stop for gas and didn't lose a lap, and I knew I had won. Jack Smith had the fastest time, and if they had had him the winner, it would have been a question in my mind whether I had won or not. Him and Neil Castle got hung up, and they went out across the infield once, and I didn't know how long he stayed in the infield. Well, there wasn't no question in my mind about Buck Baker. I knew I had won the race.
Steve, I always wondered when I was racing against Wendell Scott, what could he have done if he'd have gotten a break so that he'd have first-class equipment like those that he was running against?
It really was a privilege to talk to Wendell Scott, a very proud man, and certainly one of the more compelling stories that we had a chance to do this year. You know, speaking of champions, Richard Petty and Dale Inman will be together again in 1986. Richard has 200 career victories. Well, you know, we don't get a chance to see the drivers in their off time too often, but it turns out that Richard and Dale are big football fans, Washington Redskins fans to be more specific. And during one of the off weekends in October, we had a chance to take Richard and Dale up to a National Football League game in the nation's capital. We saw the Washington Redskins play the Detroit Lions. Here's the story.
Well, I guess, you know, we've always played football and all that kind of stuff, but we've been Redskin fans since the early 50s. And, you know, I watch them and go to them a lot, but Dale's the one that keeps up with all the players and what they're doing and all that stuff. And I need any information, I just get it from him.
But Dale, I guess you're then kind of the scout for the team.
Well, I'm a big Redskin fan, and like Richard said, have been for a long time. And this is quite a thrill for me to be here at RFK Stadium. And if I don't even get to see the game now, I've really enjoyed myself just being here and see how everything goes on. I know what we have to do to prepare for a race, and now I see these people preparing for a football game. So it's all on the same line. You got the same enthusiastic fans up there hollering and the hooping. Of course, Richard's been recognized, and it's just a lot of work for people to get the show on the road.
Our whole family was sort of race-oriented, football-oriented. Linda was a cheerleader for 3 or 4 years, you know, and so, you know, my daughters have been cheerleaders, so we're just sports-oriented people, and right now we're football people.
Well, I think my big interest, other than racing, is football. I feel like I'm growing out of it a little bit, but I felt like for a long time that if the game was on, I had to be there or they wouldn't play it, watch it on television. And I know that's different now, but I love to watch professional football, especially when the Redskins do play. But I'll watch any game as long as it's a good game. But it's just a different atmosphere here when you get out among the fans and everything, and it's quite different for us right now.
You're the greatest driver to ever get on the wheel.
One thing that wasn't different was the fans. You would have thought it was Daytona rather than an NFL game. And of course, the King was immediately besieged by the national and local media, all of which provided a good perspective as to just how popular stock car racing has become.
It's just grown so much bigger than what we'd even think about. And we always watch professional football and baseball and stuff like that and say, you know, why can't racing be that big? Because we know it's as good or better than. And I think right now it's starting to prove that.
After meeting several of the players and coaches, it was time for Richard and Dale to head up to the press box while the Redskins fastened their chin straps. With the Redskins wrapping up a convincing 24-3 win, Dale and Richard made their way to the sideline to watch the final moments.
But I really enjoyed it. You know, naturally when your team wins, you're going to enjoy it that much more, but you know, just having a dime off and coming and enjoying the people and watching how people react to things, I can imagine how they get excited during the race. So I was excited the whole game.
How about you, Dale?
Well, I certainly enjoyed it myself, too. We've been all around the field, up in some of the press boxes. I've got to talk to Dick Vermeil and some of the camera people here, and it was a great experience for me, and we got it taped at home, so I guess me and Jeffrey go home and watch it on television again.
I mean, I know he loves it, but everybody loves Richard Petty.
A lot of eyes will be on Richard Petty and Dale Inman in 1986, but Steve, I believe they'll be competitive and win some races. Another of our favorite stories was the one we did on the old beach course at Daytona Beach, Florida, where the Winston Cup cars used to race there. They'd go down the blacktop for 2 miles and come back up the beach on the sand for 2 miles, so we're going to take a look at how it all started there.
And we'll go from the birthplace of speed to the bluegrass hills of Kentucky, where J.T. Lundy and Harry Ranier, the owners of Cale Yarborough's team, are in the thoroughbred racing business, and that is a beautiful story.
No question about that, but first, let's take a look at the birthplace of speed.
This This is a test that packs 30,000 miles of highway driving into a single afternoon. The 2-mile-long beach straightaway ends in a tight turn onto the backstretch. 2 miles to go, and the green flag is waiting. Miss NASCAR is part of the official parade, leading the cars as they move along the backstretch. Coming up to the starter's tower, the yellow caution flag still holding them. There's the green. The race is on as 28 cars roar through the hairpin south turn, heading for the beach straightaway. And the yellow flag warns all of the starters. 2 cars are stalled in the middle of the south turn as the other cars maneuver past. A terrific show of car control.
Daytona Beach is known as the birthplace of speed. In the early 1900s, the beach was used for speed testing by pioneers like Henry Ford. Bill France and NASCAR began racing on the beach right after World War II. The thrills and spills continued there until 1958.
It was really a great different era, and from that we've now moved to what are now the super speedways. But all the super speedways now in existence can really look back to that beach course as where they came from. This was the starting point for the sport as we know it. And a 4.2-mile course, 2 miles of beach, 2 miles of 2-lane blacktop, and 2 10-mile turns. I can remember down there where the old south turn was, down by the lighthouse, that there was the scoring stand was outside up on almost like stilts, telephone poles really, and there was a small grandstand on the inside of the turn, and that was about the only thing. And when they'd start on the beach and drive those 2 miles up the beach, and watching from the scoring stand, it looked like an invasion force hitting, because everybody down there watching the start, and then they'd all come across the dunes over and watch them come down the blacktop. They'd run out in the water just trying to cool the brakes and the radiators off. And sometimes they'd not have a chance to really get the brakes cool enough coming back down that blacktop. They'd come right on down, they'd have no brakes going the turn, come and just sail up the turn and right over and get down the other side. One, I think it was either Buck Baker or Buck Brigance came flying in one time and hit the brakes, and there was nothing there. And went flipping out, came over and started rolling. We ran over to him and said, "How many times did you go over?" He said, "I don't know, I was too busy counting the palmettos going by."
State Road A1A runs along the Florida coastline. Where race cars once came sliding into the south turn, cars today can only head inland.
Tim Flock's Mercury leads the pack out of the south turn onto the beach. Staley's Plymouth second.
Tim Flock was one of the early heroes of NASCAR. Today, he works for the Charlotte Motor Speedway. He won 40 races during his Grand National career, 3 of them coming at the beach.
I will always believe that the old Daytona Beach road course was something that should have never closed down. If we had more fun down there running down the beach. It was 4 3/10 miles around that road course, 2 miles on A1A highway and 2 3/10 miles down the beach. We had a lot of fun running down the beach with the ocean in the background. It was really scenic.
Tim Flock in the lead keeps to a steady, powerful pace as the car responds beautifully to his demands.
The beach course gave way to the Daytona International Speedway in 1959. The sands of time had run out. Technology and asphalt replaced sand dunes and seagulls.
Bill France more or less had to take it down. That race course was all palmetto bushes for 2 miles down A1A, and people started building motels down through there. And I think there was 2 or 3 motels built, and the people would run back and forth across the race course itself. And they couldn't judge us running like 139, 145 miles an hour. And some of them got real close to getting hit. And especially some guy might be drinking 3 or 4 beers and he couldn't tell or couldn't judge he was coming at him that fast. He's going over to see his neighbor across the road. And it got real close there. So I think the city of Daytona told Bill that he's going to have to move the race course from the beach. And that's when he built the big Daytona International Speedway.
He's moving up to the checkered flag. Tim Flock's Mercury wins in record time.
It was just real unique to run it, and I think that's why the people came down there so much. We've had crowds come out of Atlanta and North Carolina, South Carolina, and they would be the whole length of the beach, Steve. I'm talking about 8 and 10 deep. And the turns were built up. They was real sharp turns. I think Bill got some motor graders and put some coil rock. The turns were banked about 6 degrees is all the bank there was. And he built it out of this hard coil rock. But I don't think you'll ever see a racetrack as unique as Daytona Beach, the old beach course.
Tim Fox, Billy Myers, the men of the Mercury Division have proven their dreams at Daytona Beach.
The fabled bluegrass hills of Kentucky are home to Harry Ranier, his thoroughbred farm resting proudly atop the patchwork of floating greens and blues. Immaculate fences stretch to the horizon in a procession that marches to all points of the compass. Thickly muscled thoroughbreds enjoying the fruits and peaceful respect that nobility is granted. After all, thoroughbred racing is the sport of kings. J.T. Lundy is the president of Calumet Farm, perhaps the most heralded of thoroughbred breeding grounds. Calumet Farms has produced 8 Kentucky Derby winners and 2 Triple Crown winners, Citation, horse racing's first millionaire, and Whirlaway. Today, Alydar is perhaps the most famous resident at Calumet. It's hard to say how valuable he is, but it's at least $150 million. Through 1984, Alydar had sired speed merchants with earnings of over $3 million. Alydar finished second in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown in 1978. Although never able to wear the roses, Alydar had earned the respect and admiration of the horse breeding community for his tenacious spirit. Qualities quite similar to those of Cale Yarborough, the man who drives the Hardy's Thunderbird. It seems like an odd marriage, thoroughbred racing and stock car racing, but there are some obvious similarities. The quest for speed and the difficulty of winning.
But both of them, it's very hard to win with either one of them. You have a lot of problems and, always something to keep you from winning or doing well, but you've got to overcome it. And of course the horses, if you break one of them and you can take it back and breed it, the car you can't. So, but then again, a car doesn't eat all the time, so it's hard to say.
What is it that attracted you the most?
Well, I personally like anything that's competitive. I like racing. We're in a racing business with the horses and everything, and it's just something we're interested in. I just like anything that races.
Alydar is outside of him and challenging that lead. The 2 are heads apart, and Alydar's got a lead. Alydar put ahead in front, right in the middle of the stretch. It's Alydar and Affirm battling back along the inside. We'll test these 2 to the wire.
Mansion number 8 jams his forward to the lead.
Harry Ranier has been around stock car racing for some 30 years. His father sponsored a car in the 1954 Southern 500 to a 4th place finish.
As you said, my father was involved in. I sort of grew up with it. But as JT said, I think that the competitiveness and the exclusiveness of being a Grand National stock car owner, which there's just very few of, and to be a successful one, I think is quite an achievement. And I think it's just the competitiveness is what leads me to do it, I think.
At some point in time, Harry and JT would like to field a team to run a 30-race schedule and go for the Grand National Championship. But for the time being, there's a more immediate goal.
Biggest thing I wanted to do was win the Southern 500. That's the first race we ever got to run in stock cars, and that seems like has the most nostalgia, if you would call it that, about it. That race does, and it's just one we've never been able to conquer, and I want very much to win that, and JT feels pretty much the same way I do, and I sure thought we had one to bring home with us this year, but obviously we got to wait another year.
It's Alliedar and Affirmed battling back along the inside. We'll test these two to the wire. Affirmed under a left-hand whip. Alliedar on the outside driving. Affirmed's got a nose in front as they come onto the wire.
When those stories were both beautifully done, got to tell you a funny story though about the Daytona Beach story. Chief photographer Tom Grabowski and I are cruising down the beach, taking some pretty pictures of the seagulls and the shore. Guy waves us down. He says, "Stop." I look up at Tom. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "We're sinking." So I opened the door all the way up to the floorboard, but we managed to make it out and get to the track. We didn't tell anybody. We didn't even tell the boss. We just went through the car wash.
Well, boy, I'm glad you fellas didn't become a part of that history of that track. Yeah. You know, there have been a lot of innovations in NASCAR Winston Cup racing in recent years. The helmets, the computers, wind tunnels. There's been a lot of wind tunnel testing going on this winter, more so than ever. So let's take a look at some of those stories. First, the wind tunnel.
Competition on the Grand National circuit has become so fierce that teams are going all out to gain the racer's edge. Race teams have been driven to extraordinary lengths to keep up with the Joneses. In fact, some of the teams have taken a page out of NASA's test manuals. About a fourth of the teams have entered the space age by having their cars tested for aerodynamics in wind tunnels like this one at the Lockheed, Georgia plant in Marietta, Georgia. For just 10 hours of high-tech testing, a team can spend upwards of $50,000.
In one day of testing, we will test probably 20 to 25 different configurations. Different front spoilers, rear spoilers, body surface changes, and maybe attitudes and anything else that the race team wants to test. So we can, in one day, we can evaluate very accurately what happens to the aerodynamics of a car.
Lewis Duncan is the owner and test engineer of Automotive Aerodynamics. Prior to starting his own company, Lewis worked as a supervisor in the aerodynamics department for Ford Motor Company. On this day, his job is to find the trouble spots on Bobby Hillin Jr.'s Chevrolet for crew chief Jake Elder. There are only a handful of wind tunnels in this country, and to understand the physics and technology required to accurately test aerodynamics is to then understand why there are but a few. The fan blade is 38 feet in diameter and has a price tag of $4.5 million. The blade is propelled by an engine that puts out 9,000 horsepower. The car is tested by wind speeds of up to 180 miles an hour. The car sits on balance pads. The balance is actually located under the test section and can measure 10,000 pounds to 1/100th of a pound. The price tag on this balance, $5.5 million. The balance actually measures the effects that the wind has on the car. Is the car resisting the wind or cutting through it like a hot knife to butter? After computer analysis of downforce, drag, and airflow, Jake Elder and his team will have a better idea of what combination of spoilers to use and where the car needs to be better streamlined.
And the smoke is striking here, and a little goes in here, but most of it just turns right around that radius on that roll cage.
All of this technology means increasing speeds by fractions of a second. But in this million-dollar sport, fractions of a second can mean the difference between winning and losing. Along with the high speeds and constant thrills, Grand National racing may appear dangerous and even violent at times. Well, that's because it is. But because of its dangerous nature, concern for driver safety will never take a back seat.
Basically what this is, a magnesium head form. It's the average shape of the American head. Inside is an accelerometer that acts as the brain. With this orange cable, we can take the information from the head form, transmit it to this machinery over here. We'll be able to get G levels and the amount of energy that was transferred through the shell to the head form. We're trying to keep that energy at a minimum. What I'm going to do is the first drop to Snell consists of 11.5-foot drop, and all we do is let it free fall. Okay, the data from that last impact is stored in this memory scope, and we can get a graphic representation of that last impact on the computer.
Frank Homani is the test engineer for Bell Helmets here in Norwalk, California, where these helmets are also manufactured. Frank's job is to pull helmets at random from the production line and put them through rigid tests to assure maximum safety for the drivers that strap them on.
And basically, let's say we've held this for 2 minutes now. Okay, we're done with that portion of the test. We'll go on and we'll do what we do at Bell. We'll take this thing on up to its destruction point, or 1,000 pounds, whichever comes first.
The point at which it tears away from the helmet?
Yeah, we're looking to either pull the rivet through the shell, pull the shell apart, or pull the D-ring apart. Now, this is generally what will happen with our helmets. We've gone up to 1,000 pounds, and we'll stop right there. At about 1,100 pounds, we shear these bolts, so we don't want to go any further than that. You can tell what kind of stress that shell is under by how it goes back to its original shape when you release the pressure.
Bell is the leading safety helmet manufacturer in the country and have been pioneers and innovators for over 30 years. The factory covers as much ground as 3 football fields and can produce as many as 3,000 helmets in a day, ranging from military helmets to any sport helmet imaginable.
This is our shell lamination department. This is where the outer fiberglass shell is manufactured totally by hand, and each shell is fabricated by a person. All right. For instance, we have these girls behind us, and each girl is laminating a shell. We might be laminating different models during the course of the day, because we do have somewhere in the area of 50 different models of helmets that we make. But each girl manufactures the shell from start to finish in a predetermined system of pieces of glass saturated with resin, and then she records her name, the date, and the number of the molds, for instance, will go on every shell.
Once a helmet has been laminated, primed, tested, and had that final coat of beauty, it's time for the real test.
What we're doing here is very, very controlled. We have everything so it's very repeatable. Out in the real world, there are no controls.
event of a fire, you won't be knocked out where you couldn't get out of the car. That would be the biggest thing, is not being able to get out of the car. Once this fire gets started, if the fuel cell is ruptured, especially if we're right after a pit stop when we have 22 gallons, that could be very dangerous.
Although fires don't occur nearly as often as they did in the early days of racing, the fact still remains fire is the #1 fear and concern of drivers.
In the Grand National cars, we're separated from our fuel compartment by quite a bit of distance and firewalls and a lot of safety equipment that we have to run. But still, we do worry about fire. It can happen. And I try to give myself as much protection against fire as I can, because that is the #1 concern I have when I get in a race car.
Fire can rip through a car in a matter of minutes or even seconds. So if a driver finds himself in the midst of a burning car, whatever needs to be done fast.
What's the first thing a driver's going to do?
They'll pull this pin, push this button, which will set off this bottle, and it's filled with halon, and it kills the oxygen in the air, and it'll give the driver a chance to get out.
Now this extinguisher is on the left-hand side of the seat. Will certain drivers put it in different places?
Yeah, some are mounted in the center of the car, but where they're within reach of the driver.
But again, the most important thing is they're going to get out as quickly as possible.
Oh yeah, because fire is about the worst thing that can happen.
Back in the early 60s, legends like Fireball Roberts, Fred Lorenzen, and Ned Jarrett battled it out door handle to door handle, much like they do today, but lacking the fire safety features we have in today's racing. Back then, stock cars were required to run stock parts, which meant simply parts you would find on your own car. That also included the gas tank, which hung on the bottom of the race cars just like it would on an ordinary street car. Some drivers would put fiberglass around their tanks for added safety, but that just wasn't enough. In 1964, Fireball Roberts was involved in a tragic fire at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which sadly enough resulted in his death. As a direct result of that accident, Firestone developed the first fuel cell, which is a safety compartment designed to hold the fuel. This innovation is said to have been the single biggest development in fire safety.
Well, Marv, we have the fuel cell here sitting outside the car. Everything here is actually housed inside this, right?
Yes, this is a metal can which houses this bladder, which is full of this foam that absorbs the gasoline.
Now this looks kind of unusual, Marv. This foam actually sits inside the bladder?
Yes, this bladder is completely full of this foam.
It looks like it'd take up a lot of room.
It takes about 2/10 of a gallon for this foam.
And that's all out of 22 gallons?
Yeah, the gas goes right through this foam. And it prevents the gas from running out at a fast rate when a bag is punctured or cut.
So then actually this foam helps slow down the flow of the gas in case we have a puncture. It'll keep it all together?
Yeah, it holds the gas in until safety crews can get to the car if it happens to be cut.
Okay, what do we have here, Marv?
We have it's called a receiver. The fuel comes in here to fill this bladder, and if the car gets upside down, it also has check valves in it to close off all the gas going to the outside of the
And it'll cut off any other gas getting out?
Yes.
Well, Marv, for people who don't get a chance to see, this is actually where the fuel cell sits inside the car.
Yes, and this is a hold down, hold the fuel cell can in. This is the receiver, the vent hose. This is the oil tank for the engine oil.
There will always be a certain number of calculated risks a driver will take when he climbs into his car. But steps toward reducing those risks, especially fire, are very important.
Well, Phil, what are some of the things that you as a driver can wear for fire prevention?
Well, there are a multitude of things. We'll start from the bottom up. I wear Nomex socks made by Simpson Sports Equipment, and I wear the Simpson shoes, which are fire retardant. They're made of Nomex, which just about everything that's fireproof that Simpson makes is made out of Nomex. Which
now, when you say Nomex, that's a fire retardant material?
Right, exactly. It's much like asbestos in that it's not really a heat insulator, but it's a fire insulator. You know, there's a popular misconception that asbestos is a good heat insulator, but it's really not. Actually, a piece of carpeting would be better as far as heat goes than asbestos, but it is a fire retardant substance, so that's something we put in the floor of our car and things like that. But we have the socks and we have the shoes, and we go up to the uniform, which is 100% fire retardant. Even the cuffs on the bottom and the top are a fire retardant. And also wear the gloves made by Simpson, which are Nomex, but it's got some sort of a vinyl type material or leather type material so you can get a good grip on the steering wheel.
Unfortunately, the chances of fire in stock car racing will always be hanging overhead. But with developments like the fuel cell and today's fireproof clothing, it may be hanging overhead, but hopefully not striking down. The Daytona International Speedway sits quietly as the sun rises on another dreadfully hot August morning. But this won't be a typical lazy dog day of summer. Oscar is in town.
OSCAR stands for On-Site Computer-Aided Research. And what we're trying to do here is cut development time and costs by being able to see what's going on in the car. So far in automotive development, a lot of design is directed by seat-of-the-pants type engineering.
People want more and more and more data. And with the car becoming more electronically controlled, you've got to know what's going on. You have electronic fuel injection. You have all sorts of different components that are being handled by a computer. And only a computer can disseminate all that information.
25 years ago, the stock cars at Daytona were basically rolled out of the showroom and onto the track. Throw in some roll bars, slap a number on the side, and you were ready to go racing. As we all know, racing has become big business and increasingly competitive. The teams look for the slightest edge. And this is where Oscar comes in. Oscar is the brainchild of the Buick Special Products Division. Some very talented engineers have gathered here in Daytona, 3 days in the heat from 8 in the morning until 5 o'clock. Drivers Ron Bouchard and Bobby Allison are being asked to buckle it up and mash the gas.
Well, I guess Oscar, he's going to do most of the work. I just got to sit here and hold the gas to the floor and turn the steering wheel. That's my job. And basically, I'll fool with the race car some when we do get, to a point where we know what we're doing. And, it'll be a little bit of a test where it might help us in February when we come back for the sportsman race.
What we're looking at today is to see how the engine is looking at the car. We're looking at cooling, oil, fuel. We're looking at the engine itself, RPM, induction pressures and temperatures, exhaust pressures. So we're looking how the engine is in the car and in the environment out on the track, and we're also looking at itself so we can decipher what's going on. Like, is the radiator too small or too big, and the cooler too big or too small, the oil pump too big or too small, or something's not regulated right, or not getting enough fuel, all those things.
You're wondering how they get all that information. Engineers attach sensors to key points on the engine, 32 in all. Once the engine is cranked, the information is immediately recorded by an onboard memory module.
2 is a 0, 3 is a 0.
Hold on, okay, 1, 2, and 3. Those are temperatures.
Yeah, those were bad. That's bad.
Okay, these are bad.
I didn't find out what the voltage was.
Well, you can't.
That's what I did. 4.
Okay.
Okay.
6.
Perfect.
7.
3.98. Good.
8.
Good.
Great.
When you hit the button, it actually starts recording it to the memory module. So that's what's taking place. And then once the button is hit, 2 minutes worth of data are recorded, automatically shuts off. The driver will come in, we'll take the module out of the car, and then we'll hook it up to this cable here, which is then fed into the computer. And then we will download the data that we've recorded onto a disk so that that information is permanent. At that time, you see a menu we have up here on the screen. It allows us to load data from the disk, already stored information, load data from a memory module, which is this, examine current atmospheric conditions, which you probably haven't seen yet. And we've got a little antenna upstairs here. That's,
saw the weather thing,
yeah. And this is always monitoring information.
Will it pull more RPMs?
I think it would, yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying right now, if you really got on it, would you pull more R's?
Oh, no, maybe 100 more.
Yeah. What I'd like to see is see if you can go over that. If it's
over the vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's a cooler on board.
Oil cooler?
An oil cooler that the oil is going through. And as you see, as the run increases in time, the oil temperature going into this oil cooler is rising steadily. And what that means is a loss of horsepower. But coming out of it, the air cooler is doing its job because you have a straight 112 degrees of oil temperature. This type of information couldn't be recorded before.
Oscar doesn't stay the same for 24 hours. We're always changing part of it. There's a couple of major systems. There's the computing systems that you saw. We're upgrading those for speed all the time. And there's the software that we've written. And we're upgrading that all the time to get more information or make it simpler or faster or more efficient. We're upgrading the data acquisition unit to get more sensors on it, make it more durable, and we're adding more sensors all the time. So when somebody changes one thing, it affects something else in the system. So we're always having fun making sure, whose fault was it because something didn't work? But that's, it's tough to develop and test at the same time.
This 3-day program was set up to test Buick's developmental V6 engine. But it should be noted that Oscar can also be used to test aerodynamics and handling. Oscar is a pretty handy guy to have around. Buick has pioneered the development of the V6 for racing. Much of the knowledge gleaned from the Buick Special Products Division involvement in racing, in fact, turns up in the production cars that you and I would drive.
For example, when we first put this V6 back into production in 1975, we actually bought it back from AMC Jeep division, which we had sold the engine to in 1967. So that's how the economy in the marketplace changes. In about 1980, we did some head modifications to increase the volumetric efficiency and the breathing of the engine, and also some oil system modifications that were directly related to our racing involvement at that time. It was a very direct development program that we had learned some things in racing that we could apply directly to this engine, which helped the reliability and the fuel economy of this particular design.
the transition to the V6 hasn't happened overnight. Buick has invested heavily in the V6. An example, for 3 days in August, Buick rented the Daytona International Speedway so they could run the V6 long and hard. Buick brought down their top engineers from Flint, Michigan, computer experts, crankshaft experts, drivers Ron Bouchard and Bobby Allison, and engine expert Jim Ruggles.
We're trying to make the bottom end of the engine just bulletproof for 500-mile races. The demands here are different than most of our experiences with the V6 has been to date. We've been racing it primarily on road courses, and now we're here to. Our long-term goal is Indy and NASCAR, and this is what it's all about. We can come here and make the engines live for 500 miles, and NASCAR is going to be quicker to accept the engine. And we feel that NASCAR will go to the V6 sooner than a lot of people think, mainly because they've had all their success in the past by aligning themselves with what Detroit produces. And the V8's about history. You know, I'm not saying it's a bad design or a bad engine. I'm just saying that where we're going now is V6s, so that's, whether you like it or dislike it, you better learn to accept it.
A number of drivers are going with the V6 in late model sportsman competition. In fact, Ron Bouchard took the pole at Bristol last month while driving a Buick V6.
You know, this year here we made a commitment to Buick to, you know, run this V6, and every time we've run it, we've been very successful. We've always been leading the race and really running away and had a problem. But, you know, I think that's one of the things when you're trying to develop something new, you know, you're going to have trouble. So that's one of the reasons we're here at Daytona for, you know, 2 days, myself and Bobby Allison, and just really to try to find out what the problem might be in the engine. They got a computer hooked up to this thing, and it's supposed to tell us everything that might be going wrong. So hopefully we'll learn something from this here, and the next time we do run them, we won't have any trouble.
In a race situation, how would you grade the performance of the engine?
You're talking about oval course or road
Correct,
course?
yes.
Well, in oval course, I feel like in most cases the operation was a success, but the patient died. We've run real good, but we've had some teething problems, and if you recall when we switched. I was active in NASCAR back in the 60s and early 70s, and when we switched from the big blocks to the small blocks, we had teething problems. And now the Chevy V8 and the Ford V8, the small blocks, are virtually bulletproof. They'll go out, and if you look at Ernie Elliott's record, they got a phenomenal endurance record. But there was a time when you couldn't get a Ford to live for 100 miles, let alone 500 miles. So we all pay our dues some way or other, and we're paying our dues right now.
NASCAR will follow suit with what Detroit is doing in many cases. When do you think, in your opinion, NASCAR will adopt the V6? Well,
we've been told that we can start running them in '87 in Grand Nationals if we can prove to them in Sportsman that we've proved to them they're competitive. Now we have to prove to them they'll live. And there's three things they're looking at. Is the engine competitive? Does it have good durability, and are there plenty of competitive parts available for everybody? And that's our goal this year, is to attain all those. And once we do that, and then say next year in '86 we go out in Sportsman and we run 300 and 400 mile races with no durability problems, we expect that in '87 they'll let us start running some of the Grand National races. Now, I don't think anybody should look for the whole field being V6s. We feel like maybe if we can start out with 2 or 3 cars, well, we're here to prove a point. And then once we prove that point, now we have a common denominator here in between the Sportsman and the Grand National, and that's the 311 Chevy. Once we can prove to them we can compete with the 311s, we feel that when NASCAR has to downsize the cars again, the logical thing is to go to a V6.
Buick continues to pioneer the V6, but they also have an eye to the future, as the automotive industry and racing continue to keep pace with the changing demands of the economy and its resulting technology.
There could come a time around 1990, 1995 that we could be the same horsepower levels the V8s are at right now, but we could do it with a lot smaller engine.
Well, Steve, there's been a lot of things happening in this sport since I drove a race car about 20 years ago.
But you know, with all the increasing technological sophistication, you guys were still racing at speeds that are real close to what they are now.
Well, sometimes I look back and it is amazing that we ran as well as we did, considering the fact that we ran much bigger cars, The tires that we used were narrow treaded type tires. Now they use the big wide tires, and of course the engines produced almost as much horsepower, but we had to use a 428 cubic inch engine to produce 600 plus horsepower, where today they use 358 cubic inch models.
You know, you mentioned the tires. I heard Tim Flock tell a funny story. He said they would buy tires at Sears Roebuck on Friday, race Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, take the tires back Monday, and said, I don't know how they got all scooped
These
up.
things were no good. They wore out in the weekend.
That's right. We want our money back.
Yeah.
Speaking of the lighter side, we've had a chance to do a bunch of fun stories this year. One of the more different ones, Ned, was in Venice Beach, California, where the race fans there are just a little bit different.
I know, you're thinking, what does the beach have to do with racing? Well, what better place to find out what kind of exposure Grand National Racing has out west? Think about it a second. In the infield at Charlotte, 99% of the fans there love the sport. They know Clark Dwyer and Lenny Pond. They know the latest rule changes. But NASCAR just doesn't get the same amount of press out west. There are different priorities. Venice Beach is a good mixture of sociology and Mardi Gras. So what better place to examine the amount of interest in Grand National racing?
Sir, you look like a stock car racing fan, are you?
Yes, I am, sir.
You've got to be a big stock car racing fan, obviously.
No, I'm not.
Are you a race fan?
Not exactly. I never really thought about it. Being honest with you, I'm a wrestler.
When I see it on TV, I go, wow, look at those cars, you know. And when one blows up, it's, wow, you know.
Richard Petty, I think, is one of the finest. Cale Yarborough is one of the... Who won the race yesterday?
Terry Labonte.
I've never heard of him.
Okay, so out here on the coast, it's pretty much been a neglected sport.
Yes. Yes. And that's too bad. They should really do something about that. Oh, one day I'll be a race car driver. See, I'm adventurous. I like to try different things.
What I said is, congratulations, Mr. Terry Labonte. God bless you. And on the track, too. But let me just finish it.
Okay, so Grand National Racing may not have all that high of a profile out here on the West Coast, but for that matter, what does? Well, that's not entirely true. We did catch up with one artful dodger in this town who knows and respects what the sport of stock car racing has to offer.
And let me tell you something, it's tough enough just driving on this freeway alone, let alone getting behind the wheel and doing like the Yarboroughs and the Pettys and the Mario Andretti's and all of the tremendous racers that have proven themselves winners over the years and competitors. And the competition is tough, and so many things can happen while you're in it. I'll guarantee you one thing, I'd rather hit off a Mario soda than drive those cars at 205 miles an hour, believe that.
And just when you are beginning to think that there weren't any race fans in L.A.
Right, I gotta go home and get some cookies and a glass of milk.
The preparations are complete. The atmosphere electric. The giants of the pit crews have gathered to do battle. Joey Knuckles from the Hardee's team, Denny Myers from Wrangler, Doug Richard from Budweiser, Dan Elliott of Coors Melling, David McGahee of Alugard, and Jeff Ellis of Skoal.
What about the other competition you're going to be facing today?
Well, I think it'll be like it has been all year. I think the 9 car will be real strong. I followed him a couple of laps, and he's really got a lot of horsepower.
Gentlemen, start.
6 crewman drivers, 6 immaculately prepared machines ready to lock horns in the Inside NASCAR 25 Go-Kart Classic. The starting field on the pole, Joey Knuckles in the Hardee's cart. The outside pole, Denny Myers in the Wrangler Jeans machine. Row 2, Doug Richard in the Budmobile and Elliott in the number 9 Coors cart. Row 3, David McGahee in the Elliott cart and Jeff Ellis in the Skomobile. What makes these men put their pride on the line in these 200-pound monsters?
We leave the track, we go to the motel, and usually if it's a go-kart track anywhere near around, we stop by just because all the guys can have a little fun. You know, it's all the other teams are usually there, and we can just have a good time, make things a whole lot easier at the track.
The field comes out of turn 4 in good order, and starter Dillard Moore puts them under green, and Knuckles gets up through the 1-gear engine first and leads into the 1-degree bank first turn. As they dive into the low group, trouble already. Richard loses it in turn 2, and great driving by those in back to avoid the trouble. Richard keeps the engine fired, but will fall to last. As they come through the water in tricky turn 4, it's Knuckles, Myers, McGahee, Elliott, Ellis, and Richard, your front 6. But Myers muscles underneath Knuckles and almost sends him into the turn 2 tires. Let's see that again. Myers takes a page from Earnhardt's book, but the Hardee's machine has good torque out of turn 2 to stay in front. Our in-car camera shows you the blistering speeds these 5-horsepower engines produce down the 200-foot back straight. Back through turn 4, and Knuckles loops the car. It could be handling that after that earlier incident. McGahee has jumped to the front and broken the draft. Knuckles falls to second. Richard charges to third. Myers off the pace in fourth. Then Ellis with carburetor trouble and Elliott squirrely through 1. Is he holding back? McGahee is leading these middle laps, but his times are slowing. There's a stiff crosswind that's brought caution on the speedway. Richard lost it again in turn 2, but in a heroic display of courage plays safety and maintenance crew himself to get back in the hunt. His cart's plastic body is a shambles, and the field is back under green. But it's turns 3 and 4 that are too tough to tame. Ellis gates a 360 as his tires are going away. Let's look at that again from the Inside NASCAR in-car camera. Drive too deep into turn 3, and that's what happens. At the midway point, your leader, David McGahee. Then it's Richard, Myers, Knuckles, Elliott, and Ellis. The relentless pace is beginning to take its toll on man and machine. McGahee is slowing a bit, and Knuckles' Hardee's car is pushing badly. Look at him trying to get more bite on the inside rubber. He may have to park it. That's Richard running down the leader. What a story it would be should he win it. He's in McGahee's draft with 1 lap left. Meanwhile, Elliott's spirit remains unbroken, though he will not win. It's clear now he hasn't been sandbagging. Richard's passing for the lead down the backstretch. Let's see who's going to make it through turn 4 cleanly. What's this? Ellis's handling is completely gone. He's heading for the leader. Great reactions by Richard. He's going to win the Inside NASCAR 25. Ellis's Skomobile is destroyed in this frightening crash, but he's moving around. He's all right. Even if he could continue, he's been flat flagged by the starter. The black, yellow, and checkered flags are all on the speedway because there's debris on the track, and Knuckles and Myers racing for position have locked fenders in turn 2. What a finish! Let's see that move by Richard at the end of the race one more time. He had to get on the binders, but kept control of his crippled machine. And let's get in there by the lone photographer to get a word with the winner.
The Elliott cart looked really tough out there.
He was the toughest competition. He had a lot of good bottom end torque up off the corner, and it was really giving me a problem until I figured I had to kick JD's governor in, and I was in real good shape.
What a disappointment for the rest of the field.
You realize you were black flagged for that maneuver.
Is that right?
Dan, a disappointing 5th place finish. What happened?
Oh, the car was a little bit loose through the corners. I think I needed my chassis man here. Bill wasn't able to make it tonight, and the crew chief, he was home working on a motor for a less important race car, so I had to do without him, and I think without the setup that I needed, that I just couldn't win the race.
Thought I was in pretty good shape there, and I kept on looking around seeing how Doug was doing. Doug was coming up on me pretty good there, and I just kind of holding my breath hoping something happened to him.
The ratchet went out early in the race. I knew the thing was loose going in the corner, but I couldn't even attempt to hold it down on the inside, so...
Well, I saw that you ran awful good there from the start, but got loose, and as long as the race went on, I believe you had a right rear going down. I couldn't tell, but I thought it was a right rear going down.
Yeah, I was definitely over my head. I hit the brakes, and I seen my light flash before my eyes going into turn 3 down here. And
the official order of finish in the Inside NASCAR 25, Richard in the Budmobile, your winner. McGahee second in the Elliott cart, Myers in the Jeans machine third, then Knuckles, Elliott, and Ellis. That's the story from the Moore's Family Fun Center in Oxford, Alabama, the Mecca of speed. It sounded like a silly dare at first.
What are you going to do for a pit crew in Talladega?
Well, what are you doing? Are you going to be down there?
But Gary was serious. Step out from behind the microphone and over the wall into the frantic and sometimes dangerous world of the pit crew. My debut would be in Michigan, but I had to know more about what I was getting myself into.
All right, George, what does it take to be a good gas man?
Just time, patience. We've got to wait for the driver to come in, stop, hit the wall, hit the hole right. If you miss the hole, you just go back and do it again. You don't lose your cool.
Empty, the cans were a snap to move. Then George told me they weigh 90 pounds apiece.
David, what does it take to be a good jack man?
I believe concentration is one of the main keys, and just being dedicated to what you're doing, just like any other job.
Just pump the handle right. No practice needed here.
Okay, Steve, what does it take to be a good tire carrier?
Well, strength more than anything else. And you're running with 80 pounds on each arm. It's about what these tires weigh, and you got to be able to turn a corner, run quick in a short difference, and make sure that you get both tires there to both tire changers so that neither one of them has the weight.
They don't look that heavy. So much for looks.
Alvin, what does it take to be a good tire changer?
It takes a lot of practice.
What do you need to keep in mind?
Just basic things that just don't get in too big a hurry. Then you can do a lot better if you're not in such a big hurry.
Earlier practice wasn't much help and did nothing for my confidence. But enough preparation, it's race day. There's no backing out now. The team is depending on me. The field was ready to go, and so was I thought, until I asked Nelson what vital job I would be doing on the number 10 research and development car.
How about overflow?
Gas catcher?
Yeah, how's that sound?
Gas catcher.
Gas catcher it is.
Wonderful, the one job I didn't expect. Quickly I learned the gas catcher does just as the name suggests. He stands behind the car and catches excess gas during the fueling. By catching the overflow gas, the risk of fire is greatly reduced. The gas bottle need not be glamorous, just effective. Well, gas catching seems simple enough, even without practice. But wait, there's more to my job?
The jackman is dependent on you. You have to have your hand up in the air, and that's going to be keep the car up. When I pull that gas out of the car, that is going to be your signal for the jackman to let the car go. So when I pull the nozzle out, you put your hand down, that car is coming down, and away we go.
This is serious business. Mess up and a whole pit stop could be ruined. Nelson wants a word with me, no doubt to offer some final bits of wisdom. Instead, he asks me, what lap should we pit on? What? How should I know? I'm having an anxiety attack. On top of everything else, I have to watch for the car pitting behind us. Should he overshoot his pit, I'm the first one he'll hit. So I need eyes in the back of my head, too. Greg Sachs pits behind us. He wouldn't overshoot his pit, would he? I'm already mentally practicing an escape route. Up to this point, I've been so involved in learning my job, I've almost forgotten there's a race going on. Dick Trickle is driving the 10 car, and Nelson has already decided, without any useless input from me, that lap 53 will be the first stop. Suddenly, it's time. Trickle brings the Pontiac to a stop. My mind is racing. Let the tire man out first and keep your feet off his air hose. Forget about getting hit. Sachs is already pitted. Hit the overflow hole. Good, no problem there. Another new duty. Grab the empty can and swing it out of the way so we can get the second can in place quickly. Get that arm ready. Come on, let's go. Gas shoots out the spout. He's full. Give him the signal. So far, so good. That's it. Let him go. It feels like all this took 5, maybe 10 seconds. Actually, it was 22 seconds. Not bad for a throw-together pit crew. Meanwhile, work begins immediately on the next stop. Cans need refilled, tire stagger calculated, chassis adjustments considered. This work is being done quickly. There could be a caution anytime, and Trickle will be pitting again for inside rubber and more fuel. Lap 81, it happens. 2 accidents, neither of which we can see from the pits, and Trickle's back in. This time, the gas can valve sticks open and gas goes everywhere. He's full, we're soaked, and I'm suddenly very glad smoking is forbidden in the pits. Sandwiched around these hectic few moments is a stock car race. I have a lot of time to watch my brethren in action, and I'm acquiring a whole new respect for how well they're doing their jobs. The 10 car makes 5 stops in all. By the last one, I've inherited an official overflow bottle from the size car, an earlier retiree. At least now I look the part. The final uneventful stop is over. Now we can stand back and watch with satisfaction the number 10 car working its way to an 8th place finish. A top 10 finish on the first go-round. How about that? As race winner Bill Elliott accepts the goodies, it's Nelson's turn to dish out an evaluation. I'm not so sure I want to hear this, so Steve Byrnes is getting the verdict.
Well, you want my honest opinion now? Well, I think you ought to stick to the Inside NASCAR show. He does a heck of a job there.
And I didn't even get to keep the shirt. Anybody need a veteran gas catcher?
As you know, if you've watched Inside NASCAR throughout the year, Mark is our race reporter at every single race. Now, he won't admit it because he's kind of a veteran, but he was getting awfully jittery before that race started. That story was a lot of fun, Ned, but what it really does is exemplify just how important the job of a pit crew member is.
Well, it is very important, and the Unocal Oil Company sponsors a pit crew championship at Rockingham each year, and it gives the crew members a chance to really strut, show their stuff, show what they can do, and they win a lot of money at it. So let's take a look at that.
Week in and week out, drivers on the Grand National Circuit battle it out to see just whose car will come rolling into victory lane. But at this race, it's not the driver that's in the hot seat, it's his pit crew. The Union 76 Pit Crew Championship at the North Carolina Motor Speedway. At stake, who wears the crown as king of the pits. Each 5-member crew must pour 2 7-gallon cans of gas into the car with a minimum of spillage and change 4 tires as quickly as possible. Efficiency is as important as speed because seconds are added to the base time for sloppy work. Example, for each loose lug nut, 3 seconds are tacked on. If more than 1 liter of gas is left over, add another second. Ring up another 3 seconds for every man over the wall before the car crosses the timing light. 5 fat seconds go on if a jack is run over, and wait till next year if you run over an air hose, 10 ugly seconds. 19 teams went after $11,000 in prize money and the reputation as the best unsung heroes the sport has to offer. Some of the teams were smooth as silk, others, well, a little less fortunate. As the afternoon heated up, so did the competition. Dale Earnhardt in the Wrangler Chevrolet had his tanks filled and all 4 tires changed in a record-setting time of 28.898 seconds and no penalties, a time that was just fractions of a second faster than Darrell Waltrip's boys. No one could beat the Wrangler time, but there was still one team to beat. 1984 Grand National champion Terry Labonte was last. His crew, no strangers to pressure. As Labonte ran his warm-up lap, the Wrangler team stood by, helpless to do anything but watch and wait. Labonte's Piedmont team came out smoking. They had nothing to lose as they attacked car number 44. Their time, good enough for second place, but sometimes speed kills. They suffered 9 seconds in penalties and dropped all the way to 10th place. So the battle in the pits is won by Dale Earnhardt's crew. They split first prize money and they earned the distinction as being the quickest guns on the wild Winston circuit.
Well, Dale Earnhardt and the Richard Childress crew do have the bragging rights for a year, and they got a little money in their pocket.
And no doubt about it, Dale Earnhardt's one of the more exciting drivers on the tour. But speaking of excitement, Ned, can we match anything that came close to Bill Elliott going for the $1 million at Darlington?
It was really something all year long to build up to that $1 million. And it's amazing how he, Ernie, Dan, and the rest of the crew stood up to all the pressure that was involved there.
There was a lot of pressure, Ned. You know, you can put up against any sporting event in this country, the Masters, the Super Bowl, the World Series. that $1 million try was the most exciting thing of the year.
The Southern 500 is always electric. To win at Darlington is special. To win the Southern 500, instant prestige, the most treasured trophy on the Grand National Circuit. For Bill Elliott, Sunday's appointment with the Lady in Black was to be his date with destiny. On the line, a $1 million bonus for winning the third of 4 Grand Slam events known as the Winston Million. Bill won the first 2 legs at Daytona and Talladega and had a chance to win the million at Charlotte back in May. But the sudden adulation and constant pressure of the media took its toll. On a visit to Bill's home in Dawsonville, Georgia, just 2 weeks before the World 600, the strain was quite evident.
You know, like right now, I need to be working on the car, and that's something that I kind of get aggravated and frustrated with because, you know, everybody else demands your time, and without that race car, I couldn't be right here. You know, that race car has really supported me. You know, when I've tried to support it over the years or tried to work on it and make it right. And it has been hard on all of us, but I guess we'll get through it. We've got through a lot of other circumstances before.
Bill's bid at Charlotte for the million was dashed when he lost his brakes. R.J. Reynolds, the sponsoring company of the Winston Million, decided to make a change here at Darlington, a change to ease the mounting pressure. Bob Moore, a spokesman for R.J. Reynolds, explains.
Well, at Charlotte, we felt that the things weren't organized right, either from Bill's standpoint or the media standpoint. So what we've done is we've set aside 1 hour every day on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for Bill to do a separate press conference. That way, Bill has time to work on the race car, and also that way it takes care of the media also. We just felt that with all that Bill has at stake with the Winston Million, that we just felt that Bill needed more time to work on his race car and to do his normal thing.
In order that Bill and his crew have plenty of elbow room and perhaps a bit of privacy, the Elliott gang was granted about 6 stalls in the garage. And if you had thoughts of sneaking in a quick interview, forget it. State troopers, armed state troopers, thank you, provided Dollar Bill with a rather imposing shadow. At the end of another day of practice, the car hauler was locked tight, and if any of Bill's secret formula was in his steering wheel, the secret formula went home with Bill. By Sunday morning, the drama had risen to a fever pitch. Everyone was wondering out loud if Bill could pull off what was thought to be the impossible. Victory Lane was being dressed up in its Sunday best, awaiting the number 9 car with open arms. E.T., a star among stars, thought all of the commotion was out of this world. Speaking of another world, upon entering the infield, there was no question as to who the crowd favorite was.
Wow, Bill!
When the clock struck 1, the drama became reality. He did the impossible. Years from now, I'll be able to say that I was there on September 1st, 1985.
Well, certainly Bill Elliott, his brothers Dan and Ernie, their dad George created a lot of excitement on the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit in 1985.
They did, Ned. They stole a lot of the headlines, yet 1985 will be remembered as the year of Darrell Waltrip as he wins his 3rd championship.
He had a super year too, by all standards, and it's great to have 2 competitors who are different. Their styles completely different, their approach to the sport, but yet they came out there and went at each other all year long and gave the fans a lot of great thrills, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you fans watching Inside NASCAR this year, and of course we'll be back in 1986.
We certainly will. We want to thank you again for watching the best of Inside NASCAR in your living room.
So long.